Are Planet Coaster console DLCs a waste of your money?
Or are they worth the buy? And if so, which DLCs should you prioritize?
Especially now that Planco console has been removed from the Xbox Game Pass, it has really begged the question for many as to how much they want to invest into a game which could certainly be enjoyed for many years to come.
In this video, Planet Plipcam and I are going to discuss if you were to spend money and purchase some DLCs, which one should you prioritize?
So no messing, starting with the worst DLC released on Planet Coaster console. Personally, I do not think that the Classic Rides pack is a good buy if you're only looking at buying a few DLCs. This is the weakest DLC for me because you are provided with a very strong range of rides in the base game, and unlike some of the DLCs mentioned later in this video, Classic really does struggle to live up to the value in receiving fully fledged scenery catalogues along with new rides. And now introducing special guest Michael from Emma J Games, who cover all things Planco console and more. What are your thoughts after all this time with this DLC?
Frontier was very wise about how they went about with the Classic Rides and Magnificent Rides, which I know we'll talk about in a second, because the Classic Rides have some pretty intricate coasters that are, for those coaster enthusiasts, are very important. So for example, the Infinite Typhoon coaster, which essentially is the coaster that is the Smiler, is part of the Classic Rides collection, along with the what they call the Interdimensional, which essentially is the Mac Extreme Spinning Coaster. But the issue there is we can't launch it like we've seen with these coasters in real life. So that to me is a lesser coaster, and the Infinity Coaster is very similar to the Bar Heist. So it's not necessarily groundbreaking, it's just bringing in those coasters that really get the enthusiast excited about it. And when it comes to the flat rides are nothing to write home about with this one. As Plip said, the base game already comes with a really good set of flat rides. The one they add here don't add much, but I do feel like the track rides are very important for what they're adding in this. As with the track rides in the Classic Rides collection, you get the Armada, which is what a lot of people use to create dark rides and like Pirates of the Caribbean stuff. The Gondola, which is basically, a chairlift, and then one of the classic basically it's convertible type kid ride. So I do think the Classic Rides does provide a solid amount of value to it if you look at the coasters and if you look at the track rides. But with the price tag, I agree that this needs to be lower on the list because there are others that should be prioritized before this one.
See, whilst Classic introduces customizable height options with the Rising Raptor, some new physics for certain coasters like the Max Spinner, and a few nice transport options, I do not believe the price tag of around £8 is justified, much other than the fact that you can explore more parks on the Frontier Workshop. And this is really quite a big factor for both Michael and I, who do lots of spotlights on both of our channels. Okay, so this brings us on to the Magnificent Rides Collection DLC, which introduces more essential coasters for parks with real stories behind them, giving more realism with some very nicely designed trains, which will be a big selling point for enthusiasts.
So you are correct in that, especially for coaster enthusiasts. I think the Classic Rides, if you were to take those two coasters as a whole, is probably a little bit better. The Magnificent Rides provides you with the Mind Melt, which is basically it's a suspended Vekoma coaster, which a lot of you see for a lot of more family style coasters and stuff like that. Then you have the SLV, which is essentially just a looping coaster, just an old-fashioned aero looping coaster that I know a lot of people when this game came on PC wanted to have in the game. And then the Vector, which I think is a very, very important coaster to have, is it's got the cool trains, it's a launch coaster. You can use a chain lift, or you can use an LSM launch system. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, guys. Anybody's welcome to in the comments. But I believe this is like the Intamin Blitz type coaster. And so those of you that are enthusiasts, this is definitely a good pack in terms of the coasters that are provided with it. Now, when it comes to track rides in this pack, I'm not a fan of it, as you are not provided with many options, as we essentially are just provided with another another chairlift. But then it does have the tracker, which allows kind of more experienced dark ride. That's kind of what you'll see sometimes with haunted house rides and some nice dark rides. So that one is good, but there's only 2 transport rides that come with it. And then when it comes to the flat rides, once again, we're given 5 or 6 rides, and this provides a little bit more variety than the previous pack, the Classic Rides, which has got the more classic Grand Carousel. You've got more of a family swinging ride, and then you've got a couple kind of but a couple more fair style rides, and then you got one called Hyper Jump and Ascendant. So it's kind of different variants of a launch tower basically, or a drop tower. But yeah, so to me, once again, I think these are important for people who are enthusiasts and really want to get the most out of the game, but they're definitely on the lower end, as all they are giving you is rides. There's no building or anything else or scenery pieces that are provided in these packs. So I think ultimately, I agree with Plip that these two are on the lower end of the wish list when you're looking at which DLCs to purchase.
I have to say that this DLC is more impressive than Classic, however I just can't see the need for more rides when you are already provided with so many to try out in depth in the base game of Planet Coaster console. If you think you might only have, say, maybe 6 coasters in your 100% effort park, then you really do have so many coasters yet to be explored, and probably more than you will ever complete in your park builds. I know really people struggle to finish parks anyway as it is.
I really agree with you on that sentiment, Plip, that unless you are really a coaster enthusiast and you just want to be able to create these particular types of coasters, there's not necessarily a need if you're having to prioritize DLCs, because I believe in total, if you count all the DLCs, there are about 42 coasters in the game. So if you take out roughly 7 to 8 from the DLCs, that still leaves you with over 30 plus different coaster types for you to make. So you have plenty of options to be able to use in your park, and especially with the Oswald limit, we can't fit 15-20 coasters in our park, so it's gonna take you a while if you're really trying to build every coaster type to even go through all the coaster types that are in this game.
I know that the word coaster is in the game's title, and this is certainly why some people play the game, but if you're into the actual theming of more rounded parks, you should focus on the scenery packs and pick up the occasional bonuses of rides. Up next is the Vintage DLC, which I personally think struggles due to a very, very poor scale compared to Park Peeps. This colourful and joyful pack is great fun if you fancy building a funfair or circus, but in terms of how usable the niche pieces are across your actual park, you'll really struggle to find use cases like DLCs higher up in my ranking.
I agree that this would also be the lowest of all the DLC packs that provide scenery pieces as well. They do have, if you look at the flat rides, they do have a couple good flat rides that are given to you. They've got a couple more carnival style, and then they've got one called Round the World, which is more of a family-oriented one, and then one called Loop to Loop. And so they do have more of a small scale to them, which is nice. And they do provide you with the bobsled coaster. And I'll be honest, I still have not made that coaster in game, so it's a cool one to have, but it's just not a very unique coaster or one that you really see too often. When it comes to building pieces, I feel like this is definitely the worst of them all, because they don't provide you with a ton of different building pieces that the base game doesn't offer. And so don't get me wrong, there are individual pieces here and there, like the vintage fence, maybe the letters and some things that you might use, but I just feel like it's not as well rounded as some of the other DLC packs. And it is definitely based around more of a carnival style, and so if that's not really the idea that you want to go for some parts of your park, then this DLC is not going to be one of your favorites.
Yeah, and I must commend Frontier for including some very useful flat rides, not only expanding the catalogue, but giving us smaller footprints, which are so much easier to integrate into intimate parks. And my key takeaways really from this DLC include some nice details on the likes of planters, making foliage so much easier to deal with, and again, a big selling point is the bobsled coaster, which whilst is difficult to get into a park, is so much fun to play around with. And as for the control seat of the wooden coaster and some flying acrobats, it's hardly worth shouting about. So Vintage has to be non-essential for me. Certainly potential in the theme, but a more carnival direction gave the pieces, for me, a very unrealistic outlook. Next up, it has to be the Ghostbusters for me, and not completely due to the pack itself, but the price tag that comes along with it. £13 or $15 for Michael. I really do enjoy this DLC, but the outlay due to the brand collaboration and the lack of a bundle with studios, this DLC can't really be high up on your priority list.
This is where I think we disagree for the first time, Flip. So I do agree the price tag is definitely higher than I was hoping it would be, and that's due to the fact of the, obviously the advertising with Ghostbusters, and it does provide you with kind of a different scenario, in-game scenario that you could play outside of the main kind of campaign and stuff. So that's, I haven't really played through that because I mostly play sandbox, but I do think that it does give you a lot of building pieces. It gives you a lot of very versatile, more wall pieces, as you're given now the city brick, you have the cast stone. You also have some, there's two different colors of the cast stone. You have a lot of building pieces. There's more scaffolding pieces. So when you're trying to add that realism to creating like supports for coasters, whatever it might be, You get those scaffolding pieces, especially the scaffolding posts. Those are really, really critical. You got some more windows, you get some more doors, just some more really to add that realism and give you that extra touch in building. You've got this firehouse building piece. So I do think that this is a very, very good pack to add to giving you the pieces needed to build. I do think one of their roof pieces, I gotta say, is fantastic to use. It's called the Gosier Temple Roof. It is a fantastic roof piece, and that is one of the greatest pieces in the pack. So like I said before, I have to disagree with you a little bit on this one, Plip. I agree that the pricing is more than people might want to pay, but if you're really big on custom building and trying to build your own unique styles, I think that this provides a lot more options for you.
If you're mad into the IP, then I can totally understand the appeal, especially with some not seen before animatronics on certain pieces, and the overall outstanding textures of the building pieces. The coaster is nothing to get excited about though, as it's a real complete copy of the other kiddie coasters with a different train design, and it's the same with the shooting dark ride as a seen before mechanic.
You were right about it, Plip, about not being essential, and I agree with that. I just think for those who want to go that extra step, whether it be with realism or just in how you are trying to improve as a builder, I think that this definitely offers a lot of opportunities for you to improve your building style and just the look of your builds.
For me, this DLC is mainly useful for small details, which this pack does get right with its attention to realistic scale. You can use the vents, the ladders, the chairs, the tables. They're all very welcome additions which are now a staple of my buildings, but they're not necessarily essential other than keeping piece count low. I must say I'm sad to give this DLC this low rating, but the price is not justified for a few good selections of build sets and details. Speaking of build sets, Adventure is a staple of my building in Planko, mainly due to the blocky temple pieces. This DLC is certainly a good starting point, and it's not too flashy really, but very good at what it does, where there's a really good mix of rides, coasters with fun physics, and then a well-scaled selection of pieces good for telling stories in smaller sets.
This is definitely a very solid DLC, and it does, like you said, it does a lot of things right. And I think it's one of those where if you are very high into theming and you like to kind of create those more experiences, more, you know, around kind of what Disney does with Pirates of the Caribbean, with some of their, how they kind of theme up their rides, this is definitely for you. It's obviously got to be around jungle themed and adventure themed, but they also have one of the most versatile building pieces you can get in the temple blocks, as they are so useful for many different things with building in Planet Coaster.
There's very little to say about this DLC really, which seems very odd, but it does very, very little wrong. Not necessarily for realism, but for pieces which you can have a really good time building with. Also a staple for my buildings is the Spooky DLC, which for me provides you with the pieces for basic building, such as the plethora of beams, which should have been included in the base game.
Absolutely, 100% agree. This is almost one of those DLCs that, yes, it provides more than just a couple staple building pieces, but there's a couple pieces in there that you just are wondering, why did they not give it to us in the base game? Like the wooden beams. And it's not just the haunted wooden beams. There's got other beams and stuff, but there's some really nice building features as well. And you can have these kind of wooden floors, so they provide a lot. But also, it does provide that spooky vibe for those who want to create the haunted mansions and have these spooky dark rides. So I agree with you. I would rate this ahead of the adventure, and it's more because of some of the items that it gives us, allowing us to build.
There are such useful scenery pieces in this DLC that form a brilliant basis for constructing set pieces which are not native to the pieces. And even if you're not a fan of making spooky themed attractions, you'll find a use for each piece in your time playing, primarily due to the peep scale. You're also given some very useful effects and lighting which make dark rides so much more exciting, and generic park lighting so much more natural as well. And for all of these exciting animatronics and effects, you design new rides which do not disappoint in this case. With new features again which push the boundaries of before ride mechanics, the pack is so well rounded that you'll find this DLC popping up all over your map. And personally, I believe that this is the first DLC pack that people should purchase, just down to the building pieces that you require to get better in the game. Again, not the flashiest DLC, but a must-have if you want to take your buildings to the next level.
Totally agree. This would be one of the first two DLCs that I were to purchase if I was buying this game for the first time. And one thing I want to add in that I should have said near the beginning of the video, is that everybody plays this game differently. So you got to figure out, okay, how do you decide to play the game? I personally, I'm not good at theming, and I'm trying to get better at that, but I personally play for realism, and so I like creating amusement parks, more like Cedar Fair, Six Flags style, so I don't focus as much on theming. So when I'm looking at, hey, what do I need? I look at, okay, what's going to help me add to the realism of the game? And believe it or not, this expansion pack does a lot of that because of some of the building pieces that they provide.
Studio's up next, and the pack which really does scream realism. It could easily be renamed just due to the need of some of the included pieces that are required to make the best transfer tracks, backstage areas, or shops, for example.
Now we're talking Plip. This is a phenomenal DLC, and I'm a little surprised that you're rating it so low. But no, I'm just kidding, man. To each their own. And so for me, this would be the number one DLC I purchased first, and it's just the realism that it provides that allows you with your backstage areas, as Plip said, with your transfer tracks. And that's one thing I love making is transfer tracks and backstage. It does give you a lot more animatronics. It allows you to, if you want to build a studio style park with some flat rides or dark rides that have more of like a movie vibe to it, this allows that. But there are two pieces that really add a lot of extra to the game here in terms of realism, and that's the chain link fence and the wooden fence. Because if you want to make a wooden fence, if you don't have this DLC, you got to use individual planks, which takes up a lot of the build counter. So to me personally, this would be the first one that I would buy if I were to do this over again.
Movement through the masses of animatronics is unlocked to make static scenes so much more immersive. Planet Coaster just needs that spark of feeling like things couple together and actually exist to help you relate into the game. And this DLC for sure ticks that box as the most flashy and exciting pack. People were pleading to Frontier to bring this DLC to console, and the hype seemed to be the greatest when it was released. Again, you get the complimentary rides, which have a fun learning curve to them, as you explore such never seen before rides on the game, and the included content seems the most in-depth out of all the DLCs compared to other DLCs, where recolorable pieces can be seen to relate to others, with their avenues explored much more thoroughly than in the other DLCs. However, I do have 2 points which I can knock this DLC for. Firstly, the laziness, where Frontier have not even bothered to add videos for the parabolic screens, no matter how vanilla the videos that they could have given us would be, as it's only in-game only. On console, we cannot add the custom images or videos or music. Or TMTK. There's things, if you're going to provide us with that pack, you just have to give us the videos that will work with it. And secondly, the sticking point of not being able to buy this DLC in a more sensibly priced bundle due to the IP release of Ghostbusters.
I can agree with you, Plip, on that first statement there, just because I think you're very right. If you're going to provide some of the stuff that this pack does, we need to be able to add videos or screenshots to really add that studio style, movie style vibe to it. And this pack does not allow that, which is extremely disappointing. And I can definitely see where that might turn some people off of it in terms of not being as excited about what this expansion pack or DLC offers.
But overall, if you're looking for a DLC that you could build a whole park with, overarching studio themes, then this pack is a must-have. And finally, last but not least, we turn our attention to World's Fair, which is personally my favourite DLC. There are so many features that in some cases improve the game twofold.
Plip, I need to apologize because I was getting on to you for having the Studios pack so low on the list when I wasn't even thinking that we only had one more to talk about. So that's my bad right there, and that shows you how I've forgotten how many different DLCs and so forth there have been. But yeah, I think this is a good one. To me, I wouldn't personally rate it like you have it, just because it comes down to what you use it for, and I honestly have hardly used this pack. Now I will say, it does provide a lot in terms of, it gives you a lot of different stalls, because it gives you basically food from all around the world. You've got bratwurst, you've got churros, you've got burritos. It provides that different kind of option and inclusion in that sense. And then also with providing scenery pieces, and it does a lot with shop stalls and different stuff like that. But me, it's not one that I end up using a ton, and I hope to use it more. But this for me is not one of my priorities. I would actually personally put it behind the haunted DLC, or the spooky pack, and put it behind the adventure pack as well. So it would be the fourth behind those other three, and then obviously a Studios pack. So I disagree on that in terms of it being the number one, but I do say that if you're big into theming, this is definitely going to be one of the top ones for you.
The shops give so much more personality and theming opportunities. Fully decked out with the stars of branding, life is injected into the game with these fun and well thought out points of sale, which makes so much more sense in areas of your park. You get to enjoy 2 very popular rides in the 2 bike rides, which are a personal favourite of mine, and a very sophisticated travel option ride. And then reaching my main selling factor for this DLC, you're given so many options to place your park somewhere in the world. Context is so important for you to make your park flow and be believable, really. And this DLC has so many fully fledged sets of building pieces that you can use in the game.
Thank you so much, Plip, for inviting me to be on this video with you, and I hope that we have been able to provide the viewers with some knowledge about if you were to decide and pick and choose which DLCs to purchase, that you now would feel comfortable and about knowing which ones are going to fit your style of play. And as always, I want to thank you guys so much just for all the support that you constantly show us and just making this community great, and thank you so much, Plip.
Make sure to subscribe to the M&J Games channel and subscribe here if you're not already for mainly regular Planet Coaster console videos. Thank you very much for joining us. Make sure to leave your thoughts down below. And finally, if you have enjoyed this video, be sure to smash that like button and check out this Planet Coaster console anniversary review for the game that we know and love.